Ok, bonsoir tout le monde et bienvenue à cette deuxième édition de nos discussions élections que nous avons inaugurées la semaine dernière avec Jad Rosson et que nous poursuivons aujourd'hui avec Riad Al-Assaad et que nous continuerons la semaine prochaine avec, sauf imprévu, 3 candidates de Madinati que nous annoncerons rapidement dans les prochains jours. Vous recevrez sans doute une invitation à propos de cette prochaine réunion, même jour, même heure, comme d'habitude. Alors, avant de commencer les échanges avec Riad, quelques mots sur Change Lebanon. Beaucoup d'entre vous nous connaissent déjà, mais on a régulièrement quelques nouvelles personnes. Et comme ces séances sont enregistrées et diffusées par la suite, ça permet aux auditeurs de savoir un peu plus sur les organisateurs. Donc, nous sommes un collectif de Libanaises et de Libanais de la diaspora qui se sont retrouvés suite au 17 octobre 2019 et suite aussi à l'explosion du port du 4 août 2020 pour relancer leur engagement et leur dévouement afin de contribuer à sortir le pays de la déroute et d'apporter un soutien solidaire pour traverser la crise et redonner la dignité aux citoyens. Change Lebanon est devenu une association loi 1901, un peu par la force des choses, à Paris en 2021, et son but est de travailler sans relâche pour un nouveau Liban, État de droit. Pour cela, nous avons 4 actions prioritaires. La première, donc, c'est l'identification par secteur de ce qu'il y a à faire dans le meilleur intérêt du Liban, via un genre de best-of, de policy paper et de feuilles de route. Nous avons identifié 16 groupes, donc nous avons 16 groupes thématiques, dont les principaux concernent la diaspora, les droits de la femme, l'eau, l'éducation, les élections, l'énergie, l'environnement, la finance, la justice et le deuxième type d'action que nous avons identifié, c'est le lobbying en France et au sein de l'Union européenne pour faire parler du Liban, défendre ses intérêts, mais aussi mieux comprendre les intérêts des institutions françaises et européennes et du secteur privé, notamment dans leurs relations avec le Liban. La troisième action, ou le troisième type d'action, c'est un type d'action sur le terrain, à travers notamment la constitution d'une task force santé, des actions humanitaires dans l'éducation, l'énergie, mais aussi dans la détection d'acteurs du changement et d'experts sur place et par le biais de discussions bimensuelles que nous avons avec des acteurs de la société civile, mais aussi des amis français du Liban. Nous en sommes aujourd'hui à notre 37e discussion.
Wow.
Et enfin, le 4e volet concerne la coopération et la coordination avec les autres groupes de la diaspora en France pour rassembler et avoir plus d'impact. Dans ce cadre, nous participons à la mise en place d'une union de la diaspora libanaise en France. Vous pouvez nous suivre d'ailleurs à travers notre site web et nos différents comptes sur les réseaux sociaux. Hadi, c'est à toi pour présenter notre invité de ce soir, Riad Al-Assaad.
Oui, merci. Je vais maintenant passer à l'anglais comme annoncé pour la discussion avec Riad. Dear Riad, it's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. Apologies first on behalf of your ally Hassan Khalil, who had to attend a talk show on TV. Hassan told us that he had important announcements to make, and you might be able to update us at the end of our session. But back to you. Received your bio, and I only want to add that on top of being a civil engineer and a historian, you have always been passionate about politics and have been acting also since the Beirut blast as a charity by yourself in restoring damaged buildings. You are going to embark us tonight for the first 20 minutes into your political journey. You'll explain the day of the list's closing and 41 days before elections. What is your view of the state of the country? How you plan to change it? What you can do in a district controlled? Is it really completely controlled by Amal and Hezbollah? And whether the fight has any chance, and if yes, how it can perdure and prevail. After that, we will have around 45 minutes for questions and answers. Let me record that the talk is registered, recorded, and the extracts will be posted later on YouTube. Riad, it's up to you.
أول شيء bonsoir et merci for all of you for two things. First of all, for the support you gave us in restoring a couple of old buildings that were damaged in Gemmayzeh, and for this invitation that I'm very glad to have me as a participant. I'm not passionate about politics. I'm passionate about my country. And I believe one has to do everything for his country because it's his dream. Once we give up, there's nothing more to do. For me, there has always been something to do, whether on the political field, whether it's on the relief field, whether it's in the daily social or economical projects that we do, there's always something to do for this country. Okay. My trip with politics has been a long trip, but my trips with elections has been for the last 22 years, and it's still going on. And I don't think it'll ever end as long as this system is not changing. The moment the change happens, there's the relief that somebody else has to come. There has to be somebody else. There are, as a matter of fact. They're starting to understand politics and elections and what it means. Now, for me, there's a system here that is a corrupt system. This Lebanon, this country of ours that was founded basically 100 years ago, that took its independence in 1943, was based on two fundamental beliefs. It's freedom and it's progress, izdihar. We have these two pillars that we started to bring up our temple. Unfortunately, at a certain time, the priests of this temple lost the mission statement, and they start conspiring to bring down this temple. And the temple fell. In 1975, the civil war was the beginning of the end of what we knew of Lebanon. A long civil war, tremendous costs, and the result was the same people who destroyed the temple came up with the same story that we will build the temple. And now, 30 years after 1991, we see that there's nothing has been done. On the contrary, we see a country empty from within and it's shaking. Politics and elections are two different things, but yet they are the same thing. We are passing in a critical stage called the elections of 2022. I don't expect big changes. I don't expect the scene will be changing. But I expect some fundamental beliefs that were born with the revolution, that were by now metamorphosing in an idea that this system cannot function anymore, is what I am seeing. When I first presented myself in the elections, it was a shot in the dark. I wasn't expecting it, and what happened was a kind of a long shot. So I was a wonder boy of the 2000 election. 42 years old, took 50,000 votes, 20% of the vote on my own and a couple of colleagues. And of course, with about 40,000 votes put on the side by Hezbollah and Amal. When Lebanon fell in 2005 after the assassination of Hariri, the new electoral law divided the South into two. So we continued the battle, and we continued in 2009. And the essential message that I was trying to tell myself and others that you cannot give up. You have to always fight for what you believe in. And the moment you stop, this country is no more yours. So I always say this in my electoral campaign, what Descartes used to say, je pense donc j'existe. And pour moi, c'est je lutte donc j'existe. To me, it's very important to fight the system. It keeps me alive, although the costs are terrible. 2018 was a very important milestone in the elections, and talking about the South as general. What happened then is a very clear result. In the South, 5 determined and final results emerged 2018. And this, in the 2022, they're going to be progressing. The first and most important result that in the South, there is only Hezbollah, 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 and Amal. We're talking about 75-25. In Amal, there's only Nabih Berri, Nabih Berri, Nabih Berri, nobody else. Little people here and there, little actors. There are no opposition. There are no more political families. There are no more these big old traditional families. La Assad, no Zains, no Khalil, no Asayran, but even the middle ones. The Azadins, the Fawaz, the Jabir, the Baidoun, the Bazzi, the whole stuff. There are familial figures, but they're a shot in the dark. And most importantly, and this is what is essential, there is no civil society in the South. Because for a very long time, all activities related to the emergence of a civil society have been suppressed. No clubs, no sports clubs, no intellectual clubs, no common districts where you can have people come to them. Everything is basically under control or filtered through the political apparatus of both parties. So this curve has been continuing. What we see now is an omnipresence of Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is present. And he is going stronger in the South. And they are going extremely, extremely ballistic now. They are distributing money, diesel, little rations here, big rations there, Ramadan. It's on the desk. They consider that this is a battle against them. This is the last battle that they will fight. And they know that. What options do we have? Now, the options that are left for us in the South are very glim. In my district, we have 3 opposition parties. 3. In the other district, there are 2. In the Jizin side of the district, there are 5. Basically, in the 2 Shia districts, predominantly Shia districts, I don't see change. Had we been one district and had we succeeded in having a cohesion against around a Christian independent Catholic from Zahrani, we might have created a change. But mind you, we are battling a system, a manzuma, a system that has been in progress and has been there for a long time, has all the tools, all the means, all the money, all the legislative, all the political, all the security apparatus with him. So it's very, very hard to change. Hence, everybody asks me, so why do you present yourselves? What's this mission impossible? It has never been a mission impossible. It has always been a pleasure to fight this system. And let me tell you, last time they had to do unbelievable issues the last 3 days for us not to be elected. And this time they're doing the same. So what does this say? That says something very important. There's a large segment of the population that doesn't like what they are passing by. They feel bad about their future. They feel lonely about their money and their kids. They feel no security. They have loss of any income. They feel that they are with no protection on the social or economical or sanitary or whatever levels. Yet they have this identification with the resistance. They feel that without the resistance, they'll be totally nude. So you have to be able to present a model that can come and say, well, we are not against this, but yet we are not with this. We are presenting a different story. Now, what's the story we are presenting? First of all, the idea of change does not come directly. It doesn't come by a knockout. It comes by a gradual build-up. There's a point system, and you gain points till the system reaches a balance where it tilts this way or another. So what you have to do for change is that you have to create a philosophy of change. And this philosophy says there is no change from above. It's not a coup d'etat. Or there's no change from below. It's not a revolution. It's not a change that comes from an elitist system or it's the masses. It's in Lebanon, because the system is so divided over horizontal, vertical planes moving on a time frame. It's so hard to create change according to a specific model. So what you have to do, it has to be a metamorphosis. It has to be a networking system. It has to be based on a www.com principle. It has to be a new model of change that we're starting to believe in. Social media is part of it, but that's not enough. So what change are we calling for? First of all, the system cannot continue. We cannot believe that the sectarian system is here to stay. Second of all, the system has to look into its economy, and it has to redirect the economy into more productive means to be able to sustain itself. Third of all, it has to see what it needs from what does it require? What does it want from the public sector? What is the role of the public sector? What is the role of the private sector? And most importantly, we have to believe that this system that has been there for a very long time needs to be held accountable. We cannot, before 1991, we said, okay, we believe, we forget everything, we erase everything, we do not forgive, we just forget. And all these people who did all the destruction and the death and came back to the system, became leaders of the system, and now they're talking about the system again, and the militias, I mean. This cannot continue. Somebody has to be held accountable on the financial level, on the economical level, on judiciary level, but most importantly, on the political level. To be able to do that, the first thing that the new parliament has to do, it has to do إقرار الهيئة العليا لإلغاء الطائفية. This will implement the articles of Constitution 22, 23, 24 that says 2 years after the presentation of the first 50-50 parliament, it has to create a new election law. This new election law has to be based on two principles. A principle that takes into consideration that the Lebanon has to be non-confessional, and the principle that there are certain sects in Lebanon that feel unsafe and unsecure. They have to be put in a Senate. They have to be put in a Senate system. Then it has to be on a large district, whether the Muhafada or Lebanon as a whole. I prefer Lebanon as a one district. This will create a new parliament. This new parliament will come back and start creating how it will divide power. We cannot continue on the Maronites, the Sunnis, and the Shia. There has to be a system with regards to sharing of power. I suggested once the federal system that was used of sharing, rotational system that was used in Switzerland. We have to believe that the system has to be very flexible, and it has to be based on merit, with a clear separation between the judiciary and the legislature. This country cannot exist without a strong army. Yet we know that a strong army needs finance. And in such a financial condition of our country, we cannot envisage a strong army for any foreseeable future. So what do? Here's a catch-22. We cannot build a strong army. At a certain time, we did not want to build a strong army. Now is the time to start believing in a strong army. The budget for the Lebanese army for this year is about $150 million, which is barely enough to buy food and diesel for the army. That barely, it doesn't cover that. So what are we telling ourselves? We want a strong army, but we don't have the money for a strong army. We want to have all of the weapons and the missiles of the Muqawama with the army, yet we cannot do that because we don't have the army. So how do we do that? Well, it's not an easy thing. It's not something that can be done immediately. But what can be done is we have to put ahead of us a single agenda, the rebuilding of the Lebanese state. And this is what I'm trying to say. Badna Dawli Adra. If we do not believe in the rebuilding of the Lebanese state based on a enforced ta'if, we will not be able to go to the next step, that is the deconfessionalization of the system. And it sounds tedious, but it doesn't require a lot. Any new parliament with a 30% of it that is not part of the system can start implementing these changes. Lastly, we had a chance. I still think we can make it. I don't know how. We had a chance to penetrate the system this time in the South. The creation of 3 lists did not help. So I believe that we still have to fight it. We still have to show, a good count. We still have to have a good political discourse. And at the same time, we have to have the eligibility, shar'iyya, to say this discourse. It's not enough to use elections to have these large slogans, these big slogans full of promises and change and go to elections and have 10 or 20 or 100 votes. It's not enough. We need to work the people. And to be able to work the people, what Change Lebanon can do is you said identification agents of change. We have to identify agents of change, and we have to implement them and help them grow step by step grassroots politics. And this is only the way we can build a real political formation that has grassroots, that represents what the people want, and go into a match with the system and probably win it by a knockout. Thank you. I'm not a boxer, by the way.
Thank you, Riad. You are right on time. Great. Just to explain how the system works for questions and answers, everybody will have to raise his or her hand, please, on Zoom. You will have to put on your camera and ask questions. Please make sure that the questions are short, and Riad, also make sure that your answers, please, are clear and precise. What is great is that as I'm the moderator, I have the privilege to ask the first question. Thank you. Your program is very clear. At least you have one. But how will you go in a little bit more than 30 days and convince voters to implement this change, or even to try to have a change while they are so much controlled? Thank you.
Voters in my district are divided into large sectors. To try to convince them with a political agenda per se is not enough. They have concerns. Most of them want to know how to eat, electricity, and hospitalization. We did a survey. They don't care about corruption. They don't care about the state within a state. What they care for is how to eat and you secure themselves. So basically, it's very hard now when people are hungry, about Maslow's 5 needs. If somebody is feeling insecure, you cannot tell him about art. You have to tell him how to protect him, and then you have to feed him, and then you have to put him in a family, and then he will feel loved, and then he'll be creative and be part of a system. What we are now, we are at the first level of Maslow's basic need. The system, the people in the system feel insecure. So we have to create an image and portray strength and portray respect and adaptability to the needs of the people. And here, by the way, is my problem with lots of these young people that are coming now into the political arena. They do not know the grassroots. They do not feel the pain because they're too elitist, or they're too much coming from university backgrounds. They haven't lived the people. The people do not care a lot. I did a survey in the south, and in my district, I asked who is the number one opposition figure, and the results were incredible. 24.4% said Nabi Berri was the opposition figure, number one. So you can understand the mentality of the people, opposition to Michel Aoun. So you can understand the mentality that we are living. Now, how do you do this change? How do you present your political program? First of all, you tell them what you have been voting for so long. The results are right in front of you. And 2, if you do this leap of faith, change from here to there, you might be able to get your money back. You might be able to create a system that the government controls all the public sector with regard to hospitalizations and universities and public schools. Maybe he can believe in me because he has nothing else to do. He has no other option. So there's a desperate kind of approach. What do you have to lose? Here, he used to say, I have to lose my job, or now people are starting to believe that they have nothing to lose. They might take the option and go with you. Now, will they go with you just for your political program? No. Politics is 3 things. First of all, it's a program. It's a vision. Second of all, it's the essence of this. Who's the group? Who's the person? Who's the party that is portraying as presenting this vision? And third of all, the means that you can deliver this vision. Whether if you have no mean, you become a demagogue, or if you're only using means to get there, then you become like what we had here, a Hariri CSE. What you have to do is you have to portray this vision. The vision is still not very clear in the minds of people, by the way. The tools, i.e. the people or the parties, are not there. And the means are definitely not there. So what's there? There's a negative voting, yes. There's a feeling that why not? Why not do this change? And most importantly, there's something that nobody really cares for, but is there? There's a antagonistic vote. I'm gonna vote because I'm against you, not because he's with me. So now this election, programs are not gonna take people to the votes. It's more than that. It's that you have to present yourself as a viable option that they can bet on you based on your vision, one, on the means, two, and on your internal on your internal build-up.
Great, thank you. Just watching who wants to ask questions. Else, I'm very happy to keep on with my questions. But please do not hesitate to ask questions. So nobody is volunteer. I'll go on. Riad, how can you succeed if you don't have reliable allies? And on this field, we have been hearing many things about lists, allies, analyze, كلنا إرادة, people getting involved. How can you cope with all this? And what is the latest stance for you? Will you be on the list with whom from tomorrow on?
Of course. First of all, very importantly, this system, you need to be on this. We have a list. Yusuf, Khalifa, and myself. Till yesterday night, we were working on making it a more of a complete list. We were lacking 3, and more of a list that represents more of what I would love to see and have. This list is the Afdal al-Mumkin. It's not the best list at all. The other lists are considered to be a list of Thawra, or of the gauche, as they're trying to say. They are valid, they are young, they have potential, but their discourse doesn't have ears of the people. The third list that presented itself today is composed of 3 persons. One is a certain respectable person called Robert Kanaan, who is supported by the Lebanese forces, and 2 others that have no, what should I say? One of them was yesterday a communist, today he's no more a communist, and the other is somebody who wanted to try his luck. So the list system is there. Now, the platforms that are here that are trying to present help, I think they have a confused agenda. They have not been able to say how they can help, and if they can, they have been a bit bipartisan by choosing people and not by choosing programs. Also, they promised too much in the beginning. They came and said, well, millions of dollars are there. And I think this is a big mistake. People came to them because they thought they will be financing their campaigns. Third, they were not transparent. We still now, people ask these facilitators, where's the money coming from? And this created a loophole where the other guys attacked. So ourselves, we are financing ourselves. Meager finances. For example, we don't have pictures of ourselves. We're using social media. And the slots that have been taken by Kurlana Irada on the Lebanese air are all full, and the costs are horrendous. So we're trying to do the basic legwork, meaning delegates, meaning food, meaning transportation, meaning communication. Nevertheless, this is a sizable amount of money because we have the largest district in Lebanon. Number-wise, it's the largest district, largest house in Lebanon. So it's not an easy job. the support that is required has to have a party support. As I said, in the South, there are no more valid parties. There's no more parties. So what do? Now we're a collection of 4 people who are trying to portray a positive image, cannot promise a lot, yet they are trying to say that the next day we have to develop something all over us. It's a very hard job. I don't see maturity a lot. I see antagonistic approaches. I see lots of egos. And I see, more importantly, people who have no substance, but yet just there on the political scene, or also part of an agenda, hidden agenda. The system has always tried this unsuccessfully. They create people or agendas or lists to divert attention of the voters from the real list towards other lists. Now, in my district, the presence of 3 lists does not help at all. We're going to be having a hard time.
Thank you. Thank you, Riad. We'll go to Jean-Claude, then Hadi, and then a question by chat. Jean-Claude, up to you.
Thank you, Riad, for your enthusiasm. I share with you some ideas, and we discussed it many years ago, and it's still the same. My question: are you facing some physical risk in this area? Do you?
Jean-Claude, yesterday we had the first physical. We had somebody that was hit yesterday. We will be facing physical. This is an area that Berri is very concerned about his popularity. Berri feels threatened, and I think we will be. We already had one incident yesterday. It was on the news. One of my delegates was hit. There are certain areas that are always hotspots, but this time it will be more. I have to tell you a statistic. Zahrani has about 55 villages, 28 Shia, 27 Christian, 25 Christian, 2 Sunnis. Tyre has 68. Last year, on the last day of the elections, the day of the voting, 45 out of 68 villages in Tyre had no delegates, no mandubin. In Zahrani, 14 out of 55. They were hit, intimidated, bought out, prevented from reaching the places. Now, I did a very interesting statistic. Sometime I'll send it to you. Because what they did is they reached the deadline of 6 p.m. and the vote was very down. So they needed to increase the voting. So what they did is they started stuffing the ballots. And they succeeded in 1 hour, and in the women's ballots, to increase the voting by 12%. So you had all during the day around 36%, and in 1 hour they increased it to 48%. Now, when we took the areas that we had no delegates, and we saw the percentages of votes that were cast, we had about 7 villages in Tyre that had 100% of the voters voted for them. 100%, 100%, 100%. We had about 40 villages that were above 98%. Okay. So the intimidation, Jean-Claude, comes on the last day in particular, and it comes during the last hours, the counting and before the counting. Okay. So this is where you see the intimidation. And this election, it's for Amal and Hezbollah, it's not an election. It is considered a istifta. It's considered a plebiscite. Okay? So they need to show that the people of the South are in agreement with their policies and that the level of voting will surpass the 50%. Personally, I don't think it will surpass the 38%.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck.
Merci.
Hadi?
Many thanks, Riad, for your presentation. I have several small questions, if you don't mind, and if our moderator accepts it. The first one concerned the possibility of leading a campaign. It's maybe close to the question of Jean-Claude, but are you under any pressure? Are you free to say what you want and to move in all the areas that concern your district? And how are you received by the people there, by the pro-Hezbollah when you get in a village or in a city, whatever? My second question, what percentage of voters do you expect to get, even if you think you think you cannot be elected? And finally, what did you sign any candidates charter that would commit you to a certain ethics and accountability?
That's a good one. Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Okay. We're kind of free to travel now. We are not very free to do public meetings, for sure. Mind you, most of the municipalities are under their control. If you want to have it in a public space, in a cafe, it's very hard. Most of the cafes there will refrain from welcoming you. Most of the meetings happen in the house. The intimidation is not physical, it is psychological. They will not tolerate that you directly attack them, but they can take tangential blows under the air of democracy. Now, there are certain villages that it is more open than others. For example, my village is much open. Other villages next door to us, it is practically impossible to have a delegate, not even to have a meeting. So it depends on the villages and on the socio-economical formation of the village. But all in all, in the south, it is very hard because the system has taken all of the tools of the state and put them they became part of them. So you don't have the judiciary or the security or the intelligence. They're all part of these two main actors. So if anything happens, you are sure to be intimidated by the police, and you are sure to be wrong, and you are sure to be in jail for the remaining of the period. Percentage of the voters. Let's give you the percentages of 2018. 2018 in the south, 48% of the electorate voted. 9% of the 48 were Sunni, Druze, Christian. So we're having around 39%. This 39%, 3% was opposition. So what Amal and Hezbollah represented was 36% of the electorate. Okay. This year, it's a different story. This year, the level of participation is way below. It is expected now to reach 35%, and I think they will push it as much as they can to reach 40%. This year, the opposition will not surpass 5%. Last time we were 3%, this time will be 5%. Now, in my district, the district has lots of actors. First of all, we have a Christian component in both areas, in Zahrani and in Tyr. This is very important. We have a Maronite component and we have a Catholic component. In Zahrani, we have a huge Maronite, we have a huge Christian component. A very smart statistic that I always used to do was that in 2000, the percentage of the Christian component vis-a-vis the Shia component were around 18%. Now it's around 11%. So you can see that the Christian population is leaving the area. Okay. Then we have another component that is the Sunni component, and that's mostly in Tyr. These two components have been subjugated to the political intimidation of both parties, but they have not succeeded a lot. The Christians in Zahrani are practically divided into 3 or 4. There is the Lebanese forces, there's a Auni, there's an independent, and there's a pro-Birri. There's a diaspora component that is very important, and in my district now we have around 2,500 registered, which is very important. In Tyr, it's also very important because the Sunni component is very important. We have a large Sunni component, especially on the border. Those two are part of what makes our area a bit more interesting. So if you can manage to engineer a decent list that caters to this public, and we can talk about their main concern, hence why we always wanted to have an independent Catholic with us. If we can able to engineer such a list with one or two of the main powerhouses, many powerhouses, we could we can get the 20,000 votes required. Now, we might get them, but we are suffering from the lack of a political electoral tool entire. Third, no, we did not. I wish somebody would have came out with this charter. No. But I think this charter is for the... a funny story. Ziad Baroud came to the law that says we will monitor all the media. And the opposition party members have to have the same as the people in government. Okay. In the year 2009, all of the opposition of the South got 1% of the media coverage. 1%. Okay. So what did Ziad Baroud do? He wrote a report. What did he do with it? He sent it to the Majlis al-Wazara. And then what? So a charter for candidates is very important. And I think this charter has to be for all candidates, not only even for the opposition parties. But for the opposition party, there has to be a charter built on a common goal, not a political goal. It has to be built on a new social contract. And this social contract that we have to do, remember I talked al-Izdihar wal-Harriya, these are the two basic pillars of Lebanon. We have to have a new social contract that says what Lebanon is. And if you do succeed in drafting the social contract, it's not a Magna Carta and it's not the Lebanese constitution. It's a social contract for all people who are willing to participate in the process of change. If we do have that, it will be very interesting, and I would be the first one to sign. I don't know if I'll be in the race anymore, but for sure I've been there for a long time. Jean-Claude knows how old how long it's been. Sometimes I feel old, sometimes I feel young, but as long as these people are in charge, as long as they are sitting in their chairs, I cannot give up. But I feel that somebody else has to be al-relief.
Thank you, Riad. We'll take a question from the chat and then go to Charles. So in the chat, the question is about the preferential vote. Alberto is saying that all preferential votes need to go to candidates of the list. Are you coordinating among the members to discuss this point? And Karine is saying it's not true. The number of votes is the one that secures a seat. So what's the exact case?
Now, in our case, because we are 4, and because we are 2 in Zahrani, 2 in Tyr, I'll give you what we did last time. Last time, our list had 6. And we knew from our sondagette and from the groundwork that we will be able to have the required number, the hasil. Okay? So we worked on having the hasil. Now, if we had the hasil then, it would have been a very funny case in the South, because the Catholic candidate that was in the opposition with us had gotten 4,700 votes. The Catholic candidate that belonged to the Birri list had gotten 4,400. The last one in the Birri candidate was Ali Ashaira. He had gotten 2,100 votes. So if we would have had the hasil, Wissam al-Hajj, the Catholic who had 4,700 votes, would not have been in. I would have been in, because we played the game of him having more votes than Michel Moussa, and making sure that Michel Moussa will have more votes than Ali Ashaira. So the playing of the preferential vote is very important. Now, in this case, what is important for us is very clear. We need to have the hasil. I believe we are short of the hasil by about 4,000 votes. If we do get these 4,000 votes, it's going to be either me inside the parliament or my colleague in Zahrani, because Tyr has a big number. The 4 members of Hezbollah Amal will get between 18 to 28,000 votes like last time. While in Zahrani, Nabi Berri will get 40, but his 2 colleagues will get 4 and 2. So the hasil game is in Zahrani. But we need from both districts to be able to have the hasil. So the preferential vote for us is practically doesn't matter. I can have at 5,000 votes or 3,000 votes, and yet don't have a hasil. It is as if I have nothing. But if we do have a hasil, the votes, preferential votes, going to me will make me into the parliament. Was it clear, Charles?
Great, thank you. Charles, up to you.
Good evening, everyone. Riad, if I may start by saying Ramadan Kareem to you and your family. It's very important. I have 2 quick questions, and it's going to be one specific and one more general. The first one, a few days ago, there were some articles in leading Lebanese newspapers about education and the influence of Hezbollah and the influence of the Shia on the education of the kids and the brainwashing. Should you be elected in the parliament, how would you deal with this, I would say, headwind? Because it's going to be a very big challenge to change the mentality of the people. That is the first question. The second question, which is going to be more general, and I know it's a little bit complicated to answer, but I would really like to hear your thoughts on how do you think Hezbollah in Lebanon would react to if we wake up one day and we hear and we read that America and Iran have signed a peace deal. How do you think the interaction with our southern neighbor will be, and the I would say the diplomacy on the ground, how will it change? And thank you very much.
Let me just. Southern neighbor is nice. I don't consider them their neighbors. I lived in Israel. I suffered from Israel. I fought Israel for a very long time. They're not neighbors. Trust me. Anyway, we'll get back to this. Education. Yes. What has happened is there has been a gradual and a systematic eradication of all public sector in the South, be it hospitals, schools, or universities. Schools in particular, the public schools, have been eradicated. There's no more, nobody basically goes to a public school. Now, recently, because of the cost of education, they are going to the public schools. Again, who is in the public school? Who is the teacher? Who is the principal? Who appoints? Who oversees? Who pays the budget? Somebody that is part of the system. But this has been diminished. If you look at other schools, the schools controlled by the both militias, this is where the money is, this is where the fear is, and this is what the whole story is, by the way. And there is the real brainwashing. So if you want to create change, Charles, you have to start by the basic understanding, by the mafahim. If you cannot go into the mafahim, you will not be able to create change. And the mafahim starts by the common identity. What is the identity that we believe in? If it is the identity of a sect or a leader or a religion or a country other than our country, then we have a problem. Mind you, it's the same thing with hospitals. Hospitals are subsidized. Private hospitals are subsidized by the government. Okay, the public hospitals are practically dead. So now you go to a private hospital. These private hospitals that are subsidized by the government, they have certain allowances per bed per month. They are under the control of the militias. So the public sector and the principle of a state in the south of Lebanon has passed gradually from the main frame of the state to the mini-state to the militia state. So we don't have a state, we don't have a dawli, we don't have an identity that is greater than this identity. Now, this has also been in parallel with the social. I'll tell you something that I always do, by the way. For example, I tried to do Mahrajan al-Dabki. And I said, we'll do it only for men. We tried to find a location. We could not find a location. Then we decided that we have to marry somebody in a public ceremony. And we do the Dabki there. That was in 2014. The last time we were able to do a DAPK was in 1987. So you can imagine what we do and suffer. Okay, a DAPK. Okay. So to be able to control the public space, you cannot control the public space. The public space is not a public space. It's a militia space. You cannot control the Saha. You cannot control the Husseiniye. You cannot control the social activities. There are villages. My village, we do control part of it. We don't allow them to dominate. That is because we have a huge portion of our village that are fighters. My village last time, we got 400 votes against the Thunai. We were the second village on opposition in all of the south. I was the first Shia member, which had 16,000 Shia votes preferential. I was the number one. Now, we were able to do that because we always fight. We do the activities. We do the small and the large and the big activities. Eid al-Umm, for example. They do Eid al-Umm, we do the Eid al-Umm. But we do it in a way with songs and dances and all that stuff. They do it in a different way. Okay. It's not that there are us and they, but they have a way of expressing their control different than ours. So the public sector is an issue. Okay, I would if you heard me from the beginning, I said that the role of the public sector in schools, education, and hospitalization has to be à la française. It cannot be other than that. It has to be for everybody. It has to be compulsory. There has to be no subsidies for the private schools. There has to be no subsidies for the private hospitals. We don't have this. Okay. Now, the relationships between America and Israel. Well, to me, anything that is can avoid war is welcome. We suffered a lot. We cannot continue on living war. In the south of Lebanon, we live war. We are always there, ready. That the bag is still there. The suitcase is there. This time, there's no place to go. So now, instead of putting all our stuff in a car and going to Beirut, most of the people will go underground. We do live the phobia of war, yet we are not afraid of it, okay? Now, peace, if it does happen, it's not going to be a peace. It's going to be a hidni. It's going to be an intensified 48 hidni. Now, if Iran and America do have an agreement, and this agreement reaches the regional aspects of it, it will definitely reach Lebanon, because what you see, it had reached Yemen. 3 months truce. The war has been going on for 6 years. Okay. If it does reach Lebanon, it will reach something very important. What does Lebanon have to offer? On the strategic level, Lebanon has 4 main components. The first component is al-aqalliyat al-masihiyya, the Christians, minorities in the east, in the Levant. The second is the presence of a large Syrian and Palestinian refugees. They can be put in boats and they can destabilize Greece or Italy or Germany another time. The third strategic component is the location of the southern border, right on the border with Israel and Syria, hence Hezbollah. And the fourth is now emerging, is the gas reserves. Now, each part of the Western community, and I will define West by America and Europe, and I define Europe by the 3 main players, France, Germany, and England, have different perspectives with regards to these 4 strategic components. Regarding the refugees, the Americans don't give a shit about it. The Europeans do. Regarding the Christian presence in Lebanon, Americans don't care a lot. The French do. The Germans do. The British do. Regarding the southern part, everybody does, but Americans do. Because America in Lebanon, until further notice, is in coordination with Israeli foreign policy. And fourth, gas. And here is the issue. Gas, the drilling in Block 9 has been done by a French company. And this French company, Total, with, by the way, a Russian company, has stopped drilling. And this French company now is saying that the exploration of this Karish and Kana basins have to be done by maybe one company, Halliburton. So what we are seeing now is if America and Iran will reach an agreement on the regional level, what it cares for is the fourth strategic player, oil and gas. So gas will be on the table, and for gas to be on the table, it needs a long and sustainable political understanding on the security levels, financial levels, exploration level, which means a de facto truce for the foreseeable future.
Which, in other words, is going to be the end of the mission or the objective of Hezbollah.
No, Hezbollah can be integrated into the government, as they are saying now, a new Ta'if 2, Ta'if enforced. Hezbollah is a political party, very shrewd. It's a social party, very important. If the security part of Hezbollah will be integrated in the government, its political role will be there for some time, some foreseeable future. Hezbollah, don't look at it only as from the perspective of the Iranian angle. It has its local and legitimate side. It has a very, very sustainable local component that believes locally. It looks at Iran as a protector. It looks at Iran as part of the Ummah. It used to look at Iran as part of the Thawra. Now it looks at Iran as the Ummah, not as the Dawla, as the Ummah al-Islamiyya. So this is something that it looks at, but there's the local identity that is not easily suppressed. The party knows that, and everybody knows that. Maybe the party as a component, as a hardcore, but the larger sector of the party and the population is still strongly attached to its roots.
Thank you, Riad. Serge, then Michel, and maybe we'll end our questions there.
Who helps you with money? The Lebanese diaspora, Israel, the American. Who helps you with money?
Money for
to help you for your action.
No.
You are mute.
I am a contractor. And recently I've been in a very bad condition. So I have a couple of terrain I sell my land and I live. And sometimes I have friends who lend me money and then I pay it back. I have no outside affiliations. I definitely do not receive money from America or Israel or anybody like that.
Thank you. Michel?
Bonsoir, Riad.
Ça va?
Oui. Riad, donc, je comprends que le résultat des élections sera largement truqué, d'accord? Au-delà de ça, quelle est ta perception du rejet de Hezbollah et Amal dans les régions à majorité chiite et sunnite dans lesquelles tu évolues? Et est-ce que c'est un rejet qui est plus important que celui de la classe politique en général? Est-ce qu'il y a un rejet plus ciblé de ces deux acteurs-là? Et si jamais la réponse est positive...
Comme Saïda?
Par exemple. Et si jamais ce rejet est important et que le résultat des élections ne le traduit pas, ce qui est probable, comment est-ce que tu penses que la rue va réagir? Ça va juste être de l'abattement ou il y a une chance qu'il y ait une réaction derrière, que les gens disent non, on en a assez, c'est scandaleux, on ne veut plus. Et comment est-ce que ça peut se traduire? C'est-à-dire, après l'élection, si l'élection ne traduit pas l'exaspération, quel est l'avenir selon toi?
Okay. Michel, what you are saying is very interesting because the end of political Harirism has created a new battlefield. The local components of the Sunni political scene have seen a huge fragmentation now. All over the area, from the north to the south, the presence of the Mustaqbal Harirism had them under control. Now there is a new actors and old actors that are trying to get a place or a piece of this cake. Basically, this fragmentation of the Sunni political class has benefited Hezbollah. It has not led him to lose. Although local areas, such as areas in the south, has created problems for Hezbollah and will create problems, and Hezbollah is very worried about Saida. But on the larger scale, the fragmentation of the Sunni political class has eased the tension that has been going between the two communities. Of course, you will have lone wolves on the political level here and there, shouting down with Hezbollah, particularly in the north. But on the large scene, a coherent political force is no more. Okay, Hezbollah here does not look at this with happiness. He would have had loved to have a Hariri, enfeebled Hariri, a Hariri, mini Hariri to deal with. He would have loved Najib Mikati to be there. He needed somebody to be able to control part of this fragmentation. But what I see now is the following. In Beirut, the Ahbash will be new partners. They will have at least 2 members. In Tripoli, 1 member. So 3 members of the Ahbash is something very interesting. And this is the first time that the Ahbash refused to have a political electoral alliance with Hezbollah. In Saida, Osama Saad is very interesting. In the north is where the interesting things happen. So what I feel is that we are having a big change in the political scene where the Sunni Shia divides used to be. There was a big Shia divide, Sunni Shia divide. Now it's no more on the electoral plan, it's more within the population. There is a big resentment against the Shia. The Shia are considered now to be the omnipresent political group, and everybody hates them. The Sunnis are not in very good relationships with the Shia. I feel that the fragmentation has a next step agenda, the radicalization of these fragments. You will see more of tough, radical, dogmatic speeches against Hezbollah. We are seeing it all over, as if it is the mot de passe. You will see more intense separation between the political parties on all levels. I feel that we are reaching a paralysis, and this is going to be much worse with the presence of a World Bank actor. The IMF will be putting conditions that are very strong on the local population. And here, whoever has the support of behind him will be able to surpass the times. But I don't feel anybody can sustain it for a long time. So the coming period will also, not only there is fragmentation, there will be an overburdening pressure on all components. So who is the last one who will say off? Is the one who will emerge to be able to reach a new social contract. Unfortunately, I don't see a central role for any government. I don't see any political class. I don't see any political actors who can identify a new social contract. I don't see anybody with any stature can be able to provide an action plan that says this is where we have to go. We are too much into the theoretical. We are not too much into practical. And that's because we don't have homme d'etat. We have the zone politique. We don't have homme d'etat. We don't have people who are looking down 20 years, 30 years down the line. Now, this is the first time I fear for the future of Lebanon. Lebanon, Al-Watan al-Risali, is quickly losing its role. The Christians lost the role. The Sunnis have never regained a role. And the Shias have lost their role. And I'll tell you a story that I always tell in my political meetings. A French doctor came to Lebanon, a social doctor came to Lebanon and defined Lebanon very precisely, in a very nice way. He said, les chrétiens, c'est l'Ouest. Les sunnites, ce sont les Arabes. East. Les Druzes sont les Druzes, Les Druzes restent les Druzes. Les Shiites, c'est les Libanais. He was right then because the Shia had no other place to go. They could not go to Syria, they could not go to Jordan, they could not go to Saudi Arabia, they could not go to any place. So this is their place. What has changed now is very important. And this has happened with the emergence of Iran. Iran, when it emerged in 78, it was Iran Khomeini, Iran al-Thawra, Iran revolution. This revolution came into a huge war, and then it decided that it has to safeguard the revolution. So it did a truce with Saddam Hussein, and it emerged later on as a dawla. It started to building Iran. Iran later on built itself and became more of a dawla. It became a ummah. So it started reaching out to other areas outside its borders. So when it did that, it reached, after the invasion of Iraq, it reached Iraq. Okay, when it reached Iraq, it became on the outskirts of Damascus, and it was very close to Lebanon. Okay, so what it did to the Shia community, who always thought that Lebanon was their home, now they're starting to look part of a mihwar, part of another larger entity, and this is what I'm fearing of. I was the first one to go on Lebanon and say, I am against us going into Syria fighting Daesh, for whatever reason. And once they asked me why, I said, because the divide between the Sunni and the Shia that's been going on for 1,300 years is going to be intensified. I suggest that we refrain from going and getting involved in this divide. And I suggest also that we concentrate on the 10,452. Now, when we became part of this large mahwar, call it the East, call it the Shia, call it the East versus West, call it the Mujtahid against anybody else. When we reach this, it is changing the social demographic aspects of Lebanon, of the Shiites, and this is what I'm afraid of. This is my main concern. So, the Sunni fragmentation, the radicalization of the Sunni components, the fractious component, the overburden that is going to come on the economic and social level due to the bankruptcy of the country, will have to force this system, this country, this raison d'etre of this country to go ailleurs. And here I'm afraid this ailleurs might not be le meilleur ailleurs.
Merci Riad, mais concernant, moi je considère que tu es un chiite atypique, même s'il y a peut-être de plus en plus de chiites qui pensent comme toi aujourd'hui. Mais vraiment la rue, le petit peuple chiite qui constate la faillite du pays, même si Hezbollah essaye d'amortir plus que n'importe quel autre parti pour la population qu'il veut superviser. Est-ce qu'elle a encore une forme de reconnaissance pour le Hezbollah où elle prend ce qu'on lui donne parce qu'elle n'a pas le choix, mais elle hait le parti autant que d'autres peuvent le haïr? Et je mets de côté évidemment les 10, 15 ou 20 000 qui sont directement payés, qui font partie de l'appareil militaire ou politique, qui eux sont de toute façon acquis au parti. Mais tout le monde n'est pas à ce point chez les chiites embarqué avec le Hezbollah. C'est leur opinion, je trouve, qui est très intéressante parce que si on reconstruit le Liban sur un accord qui consiste à dire il n'y a que l'État, il n'y a pas de parti armé, il faudra le faire avec les chiites aussi. Et donc, dans quelle mesure est-ce qu'ils sont prêts à suivre?
Là, pour eux, l'État est là, et elle est essentielle pour eux. They have no other option. They know that. They are the people who suffered the most. Ils ont bien payé ça fait quelque temps qu'ils sont là, qu'ils sont en train de subir tout ce qu'il y a comme the breakdown of l'État. Alors pour eux, l'État libanais, c'est un choix final. بس dans quelles conditions هذا أنا ما بعرفه. C'est ce que je peux vous dire, que le Hezbollah est non seulement un agent politique, mais c'est un agent aussi qui est lié à leur identité. Et Hezbollah, avec la résistance et la libération du Sud, a donné une certaine fierté au pays, au petit peuple du Sud. que c'est très difficile de enlever cette fierté. Hein. Pour eux, c'est là, c'est Hezbollah. OK. Alors, maintenant, Hezbollah, les gens rapprochent Hezbollah parce qu'il est en coordination avec Berri et corruption et machin. OK. Hezbollah, il dit, bon, moi, j'ai pas beaucoup de choix. Ou je fais cette mariage, ou c'est la pagaille. Alors moi, maintenant, j'ai pas besoin d'une pagaille parce que le système est très fragile. Parce que Hezbollah est approché par les gens, plutôt des Hezbollah, par les gens du sud Liban, sur 3 domaines. Un domaine, il était là avec Nabi Berri pour très longtemps et qui était un agent de retardement pour le développement de la société civile et une politique économique assez valable. On n'a pas d'économie dans le sud Liban. On a avec. On a l'Afrique. Deuxièmement, il y a un remplacement parce qu'il a fait cette cohabitation avec Berri et c'était une cohabitation assez chère. C'était sur le plan socio-économique, ils ont beaucoup subi. Non seulement les fonds gelés dans les banques, mais aussi tout ce qui est comme sécurité sociale, et ils ne trouvent pas. Parce que troisièmement, et le plus important, eux-mêmes, le petit chiite, ils croient bien que Hezbollah, il ne peut pas vivre uniquement avec des forces des armes. Il a besoin de quelque chose de plus que ça. Et c'est le catch, c'est l'essentiel. Comment prendre cette force armée de Hezbollah, comment donner aux chiites du Sud-Liban un rôle essentiel dans la formation de ce pays. Pour le moment, c'est pas 50-50 ou 30-30-30, c'est pas ça. Je crois qu'on a besoin de balancer quelque chose de plus profond. Un système laïque ou système anticonfessionnel que Hezbollah n'a pas un problème avec, mais qui garantit aussi un développement économique à la profonde, une participation à la partage du pouvoir assez étroite et, plus important, une politique économique bien valable. Hein? Les banques, tourisme, Beyrouth, Grand Beyrouth et les alentours sont des slums. Le moment qu'on a ça, je crois que les gens du sud Liban commencent à mieux comprendre l'État et à mieux accepter cet État. Pour le moment, pour eux, l'État, it's a piece of cake. Dog eat dog. ما في أكتر من هيك. Alors, أنا بنظري إنه le petit chiite, il est toujours attaché à Hezbollah. عنده شوية مشاكل, بس il est bien attaché à Hezbollah.
Okay.
Parce que comme j'avais dit, 36% de electoral last time was Amal Hezbollah. Only 36% of the 48% that voted. So it tells you not all of the Shiites of the south of Lebanon are Hezbollah or Amal. But who are they? That's the big question.
Thank you, Riad. Maybe I don't know if you want to say something about Hassan Khalil, who could not attend. How allied are you? What is outcome with him? And then I'll hand it to Hadi Antoine for the conclusion.
Hassan and myself agreed long time ago that in 2018 I said to Hassan, why don't you present yourself? He said, it's not the time. This time I called him long time ago. I said, Hassan, it's the time because we don't have an economy. We don't have a viable person who understands economy and can discuss about the failures of the state. And here is what happened. Hassan came and we have been together for the last 3 months. Hassan is one of the leading actors who has been strongly against the fiscal policies of the central bank. He has been there for a very long time, since 1998. And Hassan is a valid person on the financial, moral stand of what is happening. every day he has a stand against the ongoing business of eradicating our future. Hassan has an interview on OTV. I swear I don't know what there is on it. I'm gonna run and go and see, and I hope that he hasn't exploded something, because he always tells me I have an explosion to deliver. Frankly, I don't need explosions. I need just a calm head and a way ahead.
Thank you. Hadi?
Thank you very much, Riad, for your clear and structured speech, even if the hope of change in the short and medium term in the Shiite community seem low, from what I understood. Bravo for your courage and perseverance, anyway. Our last question would be about the diaspora that we are. What are your expectations from us? How would you see the future collaboration, and how do you reach the diaspora that votes in your circumscription? No, final question, completely different, because you talked about Hassan. I see that Hassan has every day, as you are saying, anti-Berry positions, but I never see positions anti-Hezbollah. How do you explain that?
You have to ask Hassan. He does have some anti, but I think because Hezbollah entered the political area, he's a newcomer. The corruption started ever since the 1994 budget deficit. And ever since, from 1994 to 2007, we didn't have a budget. We were spending a la check. Anyway, so Hassan is now more vocal against Hezbollah. He is vocal about kullun on the corruption level. But Hassan and myself, we have an approach towards the arms issue different than the others. We cannot agree that the arms have to be surrendered as long as we don't have a strong army. Hence, Hassan and myself has always been saying we need a strong army to be able to tell Hezbollah, deliver the arms. If we don't have a strong army, we are not willing for the arms to be surrendered, because we know what Israel does. The diaspora. The diaspora is very important, and unfortunately, I haven't worked it. I know that in France, there's a large component. In Germany, there's a large component. Unfortunately, lots of these components are politically organized. I know that in Germany, there's a large Sunni component that is Ahbash. I know that the ones in Berlin, the Shia, are Amal. In France, I do not know. But what I do care is that the diaspora has to be above everybody else in Lebanon. You have to be what you were in Jummaizi. You have to be for everybody. You have to feel that we need you all to be united. Don't let us create the problems that we have and transport it to you. You remain French, please. We need French Lebanese. We don't need more Lebanese. The diaspora can and should vote. And I think it should vote for change. It cannot vote for the system. كلهم. It has to vote, and it has to engage us. I do not know who and where to address. This is the first time when Hadi told me, I said, yes, please, I need this. I have never went out to the diaspora. I never traveled there. I never talked to them. Although from my village, there are around 5,000 in Cote d'Ivoire. There are in Sweden, in Malmo. We are all over the place, but I've never been able to go there because maybe I was too submerged with the local issues. And the diaspora in France needs to engage us. We needed this dialogue. We needed this Zoom meeting. But on the personal level, I'm very happy I was able to come out and you listen to me. Do I expect anything from the diaspora with regards to the election? All what I can say, vote. Don't stay home. I don't know what to say more than that. But vote and show that you are united, and show that your vote is not based on a Sunni, Christian, Catholic, Maronite, Shia. Vote for the best. You know who is the best because you have built You have left Lebanon because you are a strong believer of the merit system, and you are not part of the clientele system. So look at us here, not part of the client of the local client scenery, but as a bunch of people who believe in merit. Myself, I believe in merit. So if you care to vote for me, be it you being Shia or Sunni or Christian or whatever, welcome. All what I can tell you is I believe in you, and I hope you believe in me.